let's talk a little bit about the actual review process itself. Okay. First thing I wanted to start out with is what you're looking for as a reviewer versus the package of information that you typically get. Okay, so uh, we're gonna dive into this in the next couple of slides as far as how we parse this out here at the city of Walla Walla, and it can vary greatly depending on who the proponent is and what they consider to be adequate or not. So there's sometimes a huge difference there. And I would offer a couple of suggestions on how you can um, maybe get those first looks or those original proposals in as complete as possible. All right. So, some of those components are the stormwater design report, the civil site plans, the geotech report, which we've talked about. Any of that backup information that's required, and as was mentioned by Doug earlier, I love to see it when a proposal comes in. The design engineer actually clips that page out of the manual that's got the flow chart on it, and he basically puts a big red circle about on the boxes and follows those lines down and shows me exactly how he's making his decisions. Okay, those types of proposals are the types that typically are easiest to review. I don't have to read through pages and pages of a design report that explains all that. I really enjoy when those types of review packages come in, because it shows me that the engineer has obviously been listening and done a couple of these and knows how to present the information. Because obviously one of the first questions that they ask is, how long is it going to take to have my plans reviewed and approved so that I can, start work out there? So, and the answer to that is it depends what type of work was done. All right. So, does it follow the design standards handbook and the Eastern Washington Stormwater Manual? Well, that seems like a really silly question, but we do get a lot of proposals each year that really come in and don't follow either our handbook or the Eastern Washington Manual. Typically, those projects are done by design engineers or proponents that are not familiar with how we do things here locally. So they're from out of town, from the west side, from a different state. So those types of proposals, when they come in, they need a little extra care and handling. Obviously, you may have to may actually, if you have the ability, you may actually take the time to not even accept those proposals if they're too far out of the realm of being complete, and just say, look, let me give you some advice here. Follow these two sets of standards and a handbook that we have, and bring this back whenever it's complete. And oh, by the way, we have some checklists in the back to help you out to make sure that you have everything on there. All right. For the city of Walla Walla, we break things up into small, medium, and large projects, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. So makes it a little bit easier for both the proponent and for us to decide where they're at and what they have to provide. Next, as Doug mentioned, determine your exemptions, core elements, your site suitability requirements. Okay. Can't stress this enough. We see proponents that come in all the time that, love to waste 4 or 5 pages of paper on their design report explaining all sorts of things that really don't have anything to do with what I need to review for determining whether or not their site plan is adequate or not. So again, the more experience that you have, the easier it will be for you to point this information out to your proponents. And the more experience that your proponents have will make it easier for them to hit the mark the first time, or at least get as close as they possibly can. So again, this is the point at which I always encourage folks that are doing development here in the city, pick up the phone and call, or write out a quick email, and let's have a Teams discussion or a Zoom discussion about what you're proposing to do. Because sometimes a 15-minute conversation in advance can settle, hours of having to, look at something, or having to have it submitted, get into the queue, have to go through that process, and then to find out that maybe it doesn't have everything that it needs to be reviewed, right? So if it meets the minimum requirements for review, that's what we're looking for when it comes across the desk to begin with. And hopefully there's been some discussion by someone either on your staff or by you with the proponent, so that you know a little bit about what's coming in, what they're proposing. Is it going to meet the minimum development standards that are out there? And if not, why? So all this information is really helpful to know, either in advance or right whenever that information comes across your desk the first time. The other thing that I'll mention here too is some of the things that I like to see are if they're going to be following the UIC rule. We like to know that they have that UIC registration process underway whenever they submit the plans for review. Okay. Actually, as a proponent, you can start this process even earlier. Ecology requires a 60-day period in advance for them to review and rule authorize it. We certainly appreciate here at the city when our packages come in that are going to be using UICs, to see that information has already been turned into Ecology for them to take a look at. All right. So that lets me know that they're ahead of the game and they understand what this process is, and want to have this done as soon as possible. The other thing that we like to see is our stormwater pollution prevention plan submitted either with the packet or shortly afterwards. Now, whether or not you meet that 1 acre or above threshold or not for the Ecology's construction stormwater general permit, or you're below that and you're coming in basically under the local stormwater permit, you're going to have to put something together for a pollution prevention plan, right? And so we have some suggestions on that. Obviously, if you're coming in as a project over an acre, we recommend using Ecology's template. And I've actually gone so far as to take that template and basically complete it to the point where it has everything in it that I would like to see a project have, as far as all the BMPs, basically any of the information that would need to be turned back into us. And the only thing that I leave blank on there is all of the pertinent project information. So, and I freely hand that out to anyone who needs to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and say, here, knock this out, go through, look for all of the bits of highlighted information. Those are the ones that you need to change, turn it back in and submit it to us, that we can take a look at it. So those things, the sooner we get those, the less time we have to spend taking a project and putting it back in a queue because we didn't get that to begin with. One of our first steps here at the city of Walla Walla is determining which tier your project falls under. All right. So like Ecology's manual, we have our own little flow chart here, and I apologize for the size of things. It's pretty small, but you can reference it in the handbook there. But basically, our threshold is the 5,000 square feet or more of either new or replaced impervious surface area or land disturbing activity. So if you're below the 5,000 square foot, you're probably going to be a small project, right? So what we're going to ask you to do for that one is basically just control the erosion on your site and avoid any adverse impacts to any adjacent properties from your stormwater runoff. And by that, I mean, and I'm not picking on residential sites, but when you have for example, a single lot that comes in that's proposing to build a new house, for example, and maybe a detached garage, if it falls under that 5,000 square foot limit, great. You don't have to provide a stormwater plan for us, right? But what you do have to do is make sure that you don't adversely impact your neighbors with the drainage coming off your site. So, and by that I mean you might have to ask a few questions if you're looking at this site, which is like, okay, if you've got a 10-foot, let's say a 10-foot setback on your side yard property lines, and your house is sitting exactly on that 10-foot setback limit, you're compliant with development services as far as that's concerned, but you've got roof leaders that come off on that side of the house, and they dump off onto that side of the house, and that lot is, let's say, 1 foot higher than the neighboring lot next door. Where's the water going to go, right? Is it going to stay on the site? Is it going to flow off? Is it going to adversely impact the neighbors next door? So these are the things that, although they seem minor, they are kind of important to think about, especially if you're the guy that maybe 6 months after the house has been built, you get the phone call from the neighbor next door who says, hey, this new house has been built, and guess what? They're dumping water onto their property, which is then flowing onto my property, and it's causing erosion, or it's causing my basement to flood. So you kind of want to think about these things in advance. We tend to solve problems like that. We tend to ask our residential home builders to provide some sort of system that will either collect and infiltrate that water or carry it to a portion of their property where it can dissipate, infiltrate naturally. So it's always good to think about that whenever you're in the design stage, and especially if you're doing one-off as far as residential development, for example, or even commercial development. We see a lot of redevelopment sites in our commercial areas where they come in and they want to put a bioinfiltration swale, but they want to do it on the edge of the property where the neighboring business has a building and has a foundation that may be 4 or 6 feet deep. So those are the kind of things that you need to be aware of whenever you're looking at those types of projects. So if it's a yes, you're down here to this next decision box, which is whether or not you're going to become a medium-sized project or you're going to become a large project here at the city. This is kind of the cusp of where most of our projects fall here at the city. They're either, if they're non-residential, they're either medium projects or they're large projects. And so we try to pay a lot of attention to this point and get people through this decision box as easily as possible here. So disturbed area greater than 5,000 square feet, but less than an acre. We consider that a medium project. So if you're a medium project, basically come over and down to this box over here, and you're looking at preparing a stormwater site plan, and you've got to have some sort of erosion and sedimentation control plan, right? So you've got to show plans on how you're going to prevent the stormwater during construction from leaving the site. And you're going to have to show us if you're going to build anything on site to dissipate and handle that storm, that 25-year storm, what that's going to be, right? So you're basically going to have to decide: am I going to fall under the UIC rule, or am I going to come in under the core elements and choose some sort of a BMP, right? Then if you're at an acre or more, you're going to be falling under the large project category. And so from there, you're basically going to have to provide as much information as possible that we're going to need here to look at your site, right? So you're going to move on to figure 2 and figure 3 flow charts to help make those determinations as to whether or not you're new development or redevelopment. But you're pretty certain that you're going to be preparing a stormwater report. You're going to be coming up with and preparing a pollution prevention plan, erosion sedimentation control plan. And you're going to be, one of the other things for our large projects is that we ask that you basically look at your site with respect to the 100-year event and tell us what's going to happen. All right. So what we want to know is where is all the stormwater going to go from the 25-year event on up, and what kind of impacts it's going to have on folks. Small and medium project requirements. Here they are. Basically, control your erosion off the site. Prevent sediment track out. It's a big thing for us. Protect the adjacent properties and the waterways downstream. All right. Medium projects. So you're going to have to prepare a stormwater report and a site plan. You're going to have to somehow characterize the soil underneath the site, whether it's a geotech report or something that's equivalent. Prepare an erosion sedimentation control plan and a SWIP. And then obviously you're going to have to decide whether or not you're going to address core elements 3, 5, and 7. All right, so large projects. This is our next flow chart that we have people go into. Obviously, if you're large, you're going to have, coming into it, you're going to have certain things that you're going to have to prepare. You're going to do the report, you're going to do the plan, you're going to do soil characteristics. You're going to have to know all of this stuff. And you're going to have to look at whether or not you're going to have to do core element 5 and 7, right? And obviously 1 through 4. So following the flow chart down here, you have the decision whether or not you're going to add or replace impervious surface. That's the first decision box. If it's a yes, most of the time new development, large developments do that. Then you're going to come down and you're basically going to determine your core elements 1 through 4 and our 8. Okay. So following the flow chart down basically helps you determine your next decision point is whether or not it's a high use site, right? So those high use sites are the ones that are going to need the most treatment. As Doug mentioned earlier, any of those sites are going to require the more than basics treatment on the site. So you're going to be looking at probably metals or oil protection there. So or oil control, sorry. So those are the next decision steps that you're going to be making whenever you're going through this flow chart here. And basically what you come out with is whether or not you're going to need to do that treatment or not. And then basically what kind of discharge are you going to have off of your site for your large events, right? So if you're discharging to a water body that has some sort of a determination on it, you're going to have to do phosphorus treatment. And then we're going to want to know what's going to happen with the big storm events? Where's that overflow going to go? Is it going to be kept on site or not? Because it's really important to whatever systems are downstream. So for redevelopment, obviously, we have the same definitions for new development and redevelopment as the manual does. It's basically the same steps for new development and redevelopment. The thing that I wanted to point out for the redevelopment is that you have to consider both the new and the replaced pollution generating impervious surface area that's on the site. It's not just the new, okay, and we get a lot of questions about that in our from our development side of the table. It's just like, well, do we have to treat for everything? And the answer is yes. It's both the new and the replaced impervious surface. So, okay. Step 2, determine what else is needed for review, right? Okay, so this is what I'd mentioned before. Basically, we're looking for our UIC registration. We're looking for a stormwater pollution prevention plan if it's greater than an acre. If we're looking for what type of site soil characterization was done and to what extent it was done, obviously, and are they meeting the minimum requirements on the review checklist? So all of this stuff is what needs to be presented when these projects come in, and if they don't have it, this is the kind of things that you're going to have to talk to the proponents about to make sure that you have before you can proceed to a review. Let's talk about the stormwater site plan, right? So what is a stormwater site plan, right? Merriam-Webster here says it's a top or horizontal view of an object, a large scale map of a small area. That's one definition. Or it's a method of achieving an end or a detailed formulation. Well, here at the city, we consider it to be both. So we're looking, a plan in itself is that detailed formulation. We're looking for that, but it also has, it has to have a plan. You have to have a drawing of what you're doing, right? So we consider it to be both. And it is that comprehensive report that has all that technical information in it that is necessary for you as a reviewer to evaluate what you've got. So it's obviously going to depend on the size of the project and the site characteristics. But this is where I encourage all the jurisdictions to come up with what their minimum requirements are or should be for their projects and lay it out there for all the proponents to see so that they can have that up front and know what is required of them.